Yo, saw dudes, Dean here, bringing you some more Black Ops 3 gameplay in the background. Now, if you're looking at this video, you may notice something a little bit different than most of my videos that I have posted in the past, or at least of recent since I've returned. Yes, this video is in a nice, crisp 1080p, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about in this video, is the notion of 1080p versus 60 frames a second, which is more important to you. But before I do that, I'd like to mention a thank you to my buddy Kevin, who let me borrow his capture card, the Elgato game capture. It's actually the original Elgato, the big square ugly looking one, but it works, dude. It does 1080p 30 frames a second, 720p 60 frames a second. He let me borrow it. I've mentioned him before. He helped me capture some footage for Overwatch in-depth stats. So anyway, if you guys could check out his channel, his Twitch channel, I should say. The link is in the description below. Go over there, give him a saw, dude, say thanks. He's a good guy, and it's very much appreciated. So what I wanted to talk about, as I mentioned previously, is the notion of 1080p versus 60 frames a second. Now, in an ideal world, you would be watching 1080p 60 frames a second. However, not everybody has $200 to spend on a capture card to get that quality. So what I'm curious from you guys, from your perspective as video watchers, would you rather watch a video at 1080p 30 frames a second or 720p 60 frames a second? What is more important to you? Is frames or is resolution more important? Now, for me, I personally think that frames is maybe a little bit more important in gaming videos specifically. You got to remember that I come from a film perspective. So in the film industry, 24 frames a second is what you're going to see in pretty much all video formats. Any narrative storytelling kind of video, that's going to be 20 frames a second. TV is 30 frames a second. That's a different nature. And then I think some sports things are gravitating towards 60 frames a second. The biggest thing that 60 frames a second allows you to see is less motion blur. Now, I'm going to get a little bit technical, but from the film perspective, when you're recording something at a higher frame rate, your shutter speed is higher, shutter angle is higher, which creates less motion blur. It makes a smoother image. Now, in film, we're used to seeing, I guess you can call it that film look. You get sort of that frame blur, that motion blur to it. So we're used to seeing that. I know, like, The Hobbit came out a couple years ago where it was like 180 frames a second or something crazy like that. And people were kind of like, some people really liked it, some people didn't. That's another story for another day though. Yeah, so I'm used to coming from a film perspective where 20 frames a second is the king. Now, I watch a lot of YouTube content on my phone, which means that for the most part, you really can't tell the difference in resolution versus frames. When I say that, I mean you can't tell really the difference between 720p and 1080p. Now, when I'm looking at this back on my computer, I can obviously tell that this is a better looking image than the majority of the things I've posted. I'm getting a higher bit rate out of that, and I know this is a little bit technical from this perspective, but I'm getting a better image, basically, is all that you really need to know. And I'm sure you guys can see that 1080p, if you're watching this on your computer, that is, the 1080p looks better than 720p. So yeah, let me know, what do you think? What's more important, frames or resolution? Like I said, I think frames is more important, specifically just because I watch a lot of videos on my phone. I imagine that you guys do too. However, if you're watching on the computer, maybe you have a different perspective. Now, I do have some gameplay recorded at 720p 60 frames a second. I do have some old videos on my hard drive from stuff that I've already recorded with the in-console capture card on the PS4. I've used some of those. That's pretty much what I've been using to record all my stuff. Either that or ripping it off stream, which is 720p 30 frames a second at like a really crappy bitrate. But it works if you're just starting out. Yeah, so I do have some of those on my hard drive still, and I do have some stuff related towards 720p 60 frames a second. So you'll kind of see a mix on the channel, and eventually I'm going to be purchasing an Elgato HD 60S. I was actually going to buy one, but then I learned that you need Windows 10 and I haven't upgraded yet. I'm working on that. And that's another thing. Another question that I'd like to pose to you. In gaming, what is more important to you? Would you rather play at 1080p and a lower, or like 1080p or 1440p on the PC at a lower frame rate, or would you rather play at a higher resolution? What's more important? Let me know. Alright, so that will do it for the video. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to give it a like rating, and if not, feel free to give it a dislike. Sorry I was talking so quietly, got some people over, so didn't want to be too loud and annoy them. But yeah, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you in the comments below. Peace.